Read the arrow.
Sometimes it is. Okay, so here's my blanket apology to everybody. So I really thought that I explained the Plutarch Life book thing perfectly clearly. I felt very confident in my description. And then I was talking to your family, and I've had 2 other emails this week. We don't know which life are we reading. I can't find it. I don't know what book it's in. And so I was just getting disgruntled, I will just admit. Why can't people follow directions? And then I read my statement to my husband. He's like, yeah, I think that's ambiguous. I still disagree with my husband. I will tell this perfectly on live YouTube. But so I had written, because it was an if, it was a double if then. It was like, if this, then that. If not this, then this. Okay, my husband didn't like it. I said, if you bought volume 1 last year for my Greek lit class, then buy volume 2 and you will have all you need. Then I wrote, and this is what my husband didn't like. If you did not buy Fall of the Roman Empire, Roman Republic, I'm sorry, off my Amazon list. Because I had both of them listed on the Amazon link. And my husband's like, if you did not what? Well, obviously, if you did take the Greek lit class, then buy this. If you did not take the Greek lit class, then that. But he said, okay, I think that it could be if you did not buy either one of these, then buy that. So he found it ambiguous. So I am going with my husband. My husband's not an unintelligent person. And if it was not plain as day to him, then it was not plain as day. So that's my bad. So if you had trouble this week, that is on me, that is not on you, and I apologize. So let Ethan talk and then Karsten. Okay. Okay. So I'm sorry. I am sorry if you, but I'll explain what to do in a minute. Yes.
The main problem was I found the Sola one really easily.
Yes.
But I couldn't find.
Because he was called Caius Marius. And see, I just went with that. I'm just like, well, it's obviously Caius Marius. See, to me, here's the problem. Things that sometimes to me are plain aren't plain to you. Not because I'm so much smarter than you, because I have more experience of it than you. It just was obvious to me, and I forget that it's only obvious to me because I've been reading these for years, right? So, but okay, Alex, tell me, and then I will tell you guys what to do. And I'll give you more information.
I almost missed it because of the Caius.
Okay.
I've not associated that with his name. But I had volume 2, and I'm just going through the contents like crazy. I missed it. I totally missed it. And then Mom's like, well, you check volume 1.
Yes. So I am going to rectify this situation. Now, Ashley, you have the Fall of the Roman Republic, right? So if you have a book like that, then they're all in there, all the ones we're reading, and you're good. If you got the 2-volume set and you ended up with the wrong volume, I apologize profusely to you. But I think, so I've already sent an email to your parents, and I've told you in the email, this life is in volume 1. This life is in volume 2, okay? So if some of you are on the email list, but ask your parents. And also none of them have a first name, like Caius, in the rest of them, I'm pretty sure. Crassus, Pompey, Caesar, Cicero, the other ones we're gonna read. So I told you in the email which one they're in. Unfortunately, I don't remember which, but it's in the email. Look in the 2 tables of contents. If you lack the book you need, this Dryden translation is available online. You can Google Plutarch, Pompey, Dryden PDF, and go to Internet Classics Archive, and you can read it online. I had you get the books because I just promote reading from books. I think your attention is different when you read from a book rather than when you have a computer screen. It's very tempting. You can click on other things when you've got the computer, and it's distracting. And I don't know that the light is good for your eyes. although I do have a few documents that I've downloaded to my computer because they're hard to buy and I read them on my computer. But I thought this was better for you for several reasons. That's why I had your parents get the books. But do not despair. So next week we are reading Pompey and Crassus. One of them is in volume 1 and one of them is in volume 2. And if you lack one of them, you can access it online. Okay, so everybody has access to it. Are there any questions about that whatsoever? I mean, I'm really sorry, and I will fix this. Next time I teach this class, I will word things differently, and I think we're just, because you guys said last year you didn't think most of it was a lot of reading, but we'd already read about Nicias and Alcibiades and Thucydides, and so I did a revised version, and I bumped all of those and just had us read Alexander the Great. It means people don't have to buy this book anymore. They can just read Alexander online. Anyway, and then they can just get the book Ashley has for this year, with the 6 lives. Okay, anyway. So sorry. I'm so glad those of you whose parents reached out to me, please always do. If you have trouble finding something, because apparently sometimes I think I'm being very, very clear, and I'm just not. It's clear in my head, but it's not clear to the ears of the person listening. So that happens. Oh, yes. You guys have papers for me. I will come around. Excellent. I am accepting papers. I know I threatened you, but you missed my profuse apology, my very long explanation of everything. But I think we're all squared away. I'm so sorry. So sorry. Yes. Yes, please label. It's not an apology thing. Can make it as long as you want to make it to say what you want to say. That's what I say. All right. Yes. Yes. But it's you need to be prepared for all of those kinds, right? I love LTW, but then not everything you write is persuasive essay. It's good to have other forms. All right, do I have all the papers of people who have a paper for me? Oh, he's looking for his figures of speech. Okay. And so One Life is in volume 1 for next week. One Life is in volume 2. If you lack one of those volumes, they're online. Yes.
Which ones are we doing?
Pompey and Crassus. Crassus. I will look in my volume 1 too. Crassus is in volume 1. It's at the end of the list. Oh, and you've got volume 2? Okay. Okay, and Crassus is at the end of volume 1. All right. Oh, Hannah, I have a paper for you. Hannah, who decided to do the Summa that no one else had to do, just because she wanted to. Because it's admirable and noteworthy. I'm sorry. If you don't want to be. No, I was going to give one and then I canceled it and she said, I want to do it anyway. Okay, I'm sorry. But sometimes even wallflowers could be an example to other people. I apologize, Hannah. I'm full of apologies today. I'm messing up. So before we start, and I want to spend some time talking about why we're reading these biographies. Because I was struggling with really how to present this information to you. I feel like I end up just going through until this happened and this happened, he did this and he did that. And it's easy to lose the big picture, why we are doing this. And I don't know if you'll remember, those of you who were with me last year, Plutarch in one of his lives said why he was doing this, why he writes these biographies. Does anybody remember Why does he spend so much time writing these lives of famous men? Why?
So that people may learn their history.
Okay. And what should we learn?
Their virtues, their how they acted.
Okay. And okay, all of the above. You know, first of all, I think history is the coolest thing. I love, you guys know, right? I love things that happen in the past. I love touching or being near something that has had thousands of years of people looking at it and touching it. And it just gives me a thrill and it makes me feel connected to all those people. But it also shows me examples. And so the junior high kids, they're doing the Peloponnesian War, okay? And Dorothy Mills, in her book, said this, and I read it to them, and I think it's worth looking at for us to. Oh, I had trouble finding it yesterday, and I'm having trouble finding it today. Be patient with me. I may have to paraphrase it because I don't know if I'm going to find it. It was just here. I am really out of it. Okay, I'll paraphrase her. She said, nobody knows the future. But when we read old stories, we get to see the beginning, the middle, and the end of a story. We are in a story, but we don't know the end. You are a story, and you don't know the end yet. But at some point, we all have crossroads, right? I'm going to pick this road, or I'm going to pick that road. I'm going to make this choice or that choice. And it is helpful to know the people who before us made a choice. And what happened, how the story ended, right? If you're walking on a path through the woods and like Robert Frost's, the paths diverged in the yellow woods, and it's a Robert Frost poem, and you take one, you might not know where it's going to end. But if somebody has walked the path before you and they come back and tell you, you are much better armed to make a decision. And I don't think, history is not an Aesop's fable where the moral of the story is don't be lazy or, little by little, bit by bit wins the race, tortoise and the hare, that sort of thing. That's not history. History is full of ups and downs and quirks and weird things that sound stranger than fiction. But it also can be a window to what happens when certain choices are made. Does that make sense? And so read, because we're going to be reading four more of these lives. And as you read these lives of people, look at what they were like and what choices they made and where it led them. And I don't know, you're probably not going to be put in charge of an army. Maybe you will. I don't know. Maybe you're not going to become dictator. I don't know, because men can't see the future. But you will have power over someone sometime, as a parent or an employer or in some form. And you can look and see this is what happens when power is abused or power is used gently. And how will I choose? Because you'll have to choose someday. Yes?
Marius and Sulla were terrible.
Marius and Sulla were terrible people. But the thing is, at least one of them didn't start out so. And so, go ahead. Oh, okay. So that's what I'd like us to do. Instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, Mrs. Ferguson is terminably going on and talking about what happened next and what happened next. But what we're looking for is clues, not like we're solving a mystery, but just how does this person end up like this? because I don't want to end up like that. Also, this is a critical time in the history of Rome, when the Republic starts falling down. Ergo, the book that Ashley has is called Fall of the Roman Republic. These 6 lives exemplify everything is falling apart. So let's take a look. Go ahead and get your reading questions out. I wanted to tell you all, because I'm just pleased as punch, I'm going to start being a student again in January. I'm applied to a master's program. And a Master of Humanities with a classical education concentration. And some of the classes I have to take are teaching the ancients, great works of the medieval, and I was like, oh, yes, I want to do this. So I'm just starting with one class in January, and I know I'm an old lady, but I'm not the oldest person in the program. The oldest person is 65. They said they have a 65-year-old enrolled in the program. So, and I'm hoping that it will just make me better able to do this with you guys. Plus, I never stop wanting to learn stuff. So, anyway. So maybe I'll be writing papers too. See, while you're writing a paper, I'll feel your pain. I have pictures. They are disturbing. This is Marius. It would help if he doesn't look very friendly. But this is Sulla. It would help if Sulla had a nose. I feel like. Well, that's the nose problem. What? That's very cruel to Marius and Sulla. They were fine-looking men in their day, I'm sure. Maybe not. He's got kind of a Voldemort noseless thing going on. But yeah, Marius and Sulla, I've got busts of these guys. And obviously, they want to make them look as powerful and stern as possible. They're not going to show them laughing and chatting. No. I find busts with the eye thing, the blank eyes being very disturbing. Yes, but it would be worse if they put like fake eyes stuck in there. That would be even more horrifying. So we're going to be glad they didn't do that. So Alex said Marius and Sulla are terrible people. That was his summary of the 2 lives. And certainly I think we're justified in making that comment. They were terrible people. It's interesting because one of them is low class, low birth. One of them is a patrician. One of them doesn't want anyone to think he did anything by luck. It's all skill. And the other one even takes this nickname, Felix, lucky, because he's like, yeah, I'm pretty lucky. He doesn't care. They're very, very different sorts of men. One of them is very work-oriented, it seems to me, Marius. And Sulla likes to party. Sulla starts out as a partier. He parties freely through his war years. And after he retires, he parties so much that it kills him, frankly. It says it brought ill health on him. It was. We'll have to read that because it was so disgusting. But these 2 forces, very opposite, just butt heads. And what breaks out is the first wave of the civil wars that are going to rack Rome for 70-ish years. It's going to be this over and over and over again. It's horrifying. But again, we need to remember, we are a republic. Once upon a time, this was a law-abiding, orderly. I realize Livy, we've got the plebeians seceding and going up on their hill and all the argument. I realize that. But they were solid enough to conquer the world and go on for 700 years. We're only 250 years into it as Americans, But then they did. They did. Now, you guys know your history enough to know they're going to go on. It's going to go on another 500 years after this in the form of empire, but it's not going to be a republic anymore. And eventually it's not even going to pretend to be one. At first, they're going to pretend to be one. I think all the doors we can close are closed. Oh, is there an open door somewhere? Oh, if somebody wants to go soundproof us, please be my guest. Well, I saw the Ladsons were bringing in drums, so apparently we are doing drums, which drums are awesome. Love percussion. You know what? It's okay. This will give us practice in being focused and patient. Okay. Oh, you know what I'd like to do also before we do? I'm going to talk about what you're going to write for me next. And then we can just launch into this. You're not going to write anything this week. I mean, you're going to take notes, okay? But I'm going to have you write, and those of you who were with me last year or previous years are going to be familiar with this already. You're going to write what are called an encomium or a vituperation, okay? Encomium is a praise of someone, all right? A vituperation is a blame of someone. And it's a set form, all right? It's not just, please praise this person. This is part of the ancient rhetorical exercises called the progymnasmata that they had students of writing and rhetoric go through just to practice coming up with ideas. And there are categories you're going to write about. And here are the categories. They're birth and family, their education, and their deeds. And the deeds come in three kinds. Deeds of the body, like physical exploits. Deeds of the mind, you know, being really smart. A good general would fall into this. A good general would be both these, I suppose. And deeds brought about blessed by fortune. All right, I'm going to get out of the way. And so we're not writing this week, but here's what I'd really like you to do. As you read the life of Crassus and the life of Pompey, I would like you to jot these down while you're reading. Then when you go to choose one and write, you have them all there. You don't have to go back through pages and pages like, where did he do this? What was this? What family was he from? Right? If you want to, you can jot down things that we observed today about Marius and Sulla. But if you don't want to include, because I'm going to ask you to pick one. Pick one. Yes, Hannah. Yes. So, yes. So, for example, I might have a page with these and I might write, Pompey here. And then when I notice that Plutarch mentions things, I will jot them down, or at least I'll jot down the page numbers. If you don't want to write out the whole deed, at least write down the page number and make a little pencil mark in the book next to it, so you can find it again to make it easier.
And you can just pick any of the replies that we've done this year, or does it have to be Crassus?
No, we're going to pick any, because we're going to read Pompey and Crassus and Cicero and Caesar. All right. But I think we're going to write it before we read Caesar. But I'm going to talk about Marius and Sulla today. So I might highlight some of these things for you. In fact, Marius, I know for a fact I am, because I want to talk about his attitude towards learning. So if you want to just jot down Marius, low-class family, hates learning, and just jot down the page, then you'll have it. But I'm not asking you to write a paper this week. You're gathering information so that you can write about one of these guys under these categories. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, yeah, Ethan. Yes, in fact, I copied and pasted it into your document. It's the same example, even the Thucydides example. It's in the next lesson, I think. It's week 11, week 12, something like that. Yeah, it's on page 35. All right, it should look very familiar. Okay. Oh, that I
mean,
did.
they
I
actually,
did.
mean the same thing.
You know what? And somebody yesterday was saying, didn't you call that something else last year? Like, I don't remember. Okay.
Advective sounds, but
My mind is not with it.
sounds better.
You like it sounds mean. Vituperation. Okay. Effective, yes. Okay, let's dive into Marius. And if you notice things about Marius under these categories, you can jot them down and you'll have them.
It's gonna be hard to make
You know what it might be. First of all, we are told he was born of parents altogether obscure and indigent. Poor nobodies. These are Marius's parents who supported themselves by daily labor. He spent a considerable part of his life before he saw and tasted the pleasures of the city. He's a poor, obscure country boy. Nobody. That's Marius. And it says, Marius said never to have either studied Greek or to have use of that language in any matter of consequence. Now you might say, well, I haven't studied Greek either. Good for you, Marius. Well, at this point, Greece had already been conquered by Rome, and many Greek slaves had been brought to Rome, and everybody who was anybody probably had a Greek slave in your household that would teach your children Greek so that they could be cultured and literate in all that literature that wasn't translated into Latin yet, so they could read Euripides and Aeschylus and Thucydides and Herodotus. So
Probably didn't have slaves.
probably no. If they were a nobody family, certainly he didn't have. So he had very little education. But listen to what he says. Thinking it ridiculous to bestow time in that learning, the teachers of which were little better than slaves. I don't need to learn that. People who know that, they're just slaves anyway. Who needs that? I'm not going to use that. And this brought an idea to my mind. Because sometimes I hear students say, and sometimes I was the student who said it, I'm never going to use this. I have to learn calculus. I don't use calculus. I don't learn physics. I don't care. I turn on the light and the light comes on. This is all the physics I need to know. I don't need to know how light bulbs work. When will I ever use that? Now, you don't have to raise your hand, but can some of you maybe see yourself as possibly have being guilty of this attitude on occasion? Maybe. I don't know why I have to learn that. I'm never going to use it. This was Marius's proposition. I don't need that. How much of losers know that? I'll end up in slaves. I'm a war guy. I just need war stuff. That's all I need to know. All that book learning. And here's my question for you. If you are never going to use chemistry, you're not going to become a chemist. You're not going to be a doctor. If you are never going to become a mathematician or an engineer and use calculus, why in the world should your parents make you learn it? Why do you think, Ethan?
One, God made all this stuff, so therefore we should.
Did he take yours?
And two, we need to stimulate our minds, or else our minds would be mush.
Okay.
Mush.
Does anybody? Okay, so all the world is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Therefore, all things he created are good, and all things are profitable. I mean, I'm pirating scripture now. It says all scripture is profitable. I'm saying all things are profitable. All things are not profitable, but all creation, as creation, is profitable, and it stimulates our minds. Does anybody want to throw anything else? I'm sorry, he stole yours, Simeon. Sometimes I will give you a secret. Sometimes adults still have this attitude. I don't know why I have to deal with this. This is useless to me. I can't believe I have to deal with this. But I like Ethan's answer very much. The ancient world, you guys are familiar with this. And my first class that I'm going to take is the trivium, and then I have to take a quadrivium. I have to read Euclid. Oh no. Once upon a time, people went through a series of things. Everybody learned the same stuff. grammar, logic, and rhetoric, because those are the use of words and language, and then arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. That's the quadrivium. Everybody learns it because when you learn something, it changes you. Not just because you know the facts. When you decline your nouns and you conjugate your verbs in Latin, it's making you orderly, mentally orderly. When you have to learn physics formulas and, you know, algebra, geometrical proof, it makes you, I know, see, you either love them, I find that, you either love it or you hate it. Nobody's lukewarm about proofs. It changes you and makes you a different person. And here's a key that Plutarch knows this, because here's what he says just down the page. He says, if any could have persuaded Marius to pay his devotion to the Greek muses and the Graces, in other words, if anyone could have persuaded him, Marius, everybody needs some literature in their lives. Everybody needs some art. Everybody needs some music. If someone could have done this, he had never brought his incomparable actions, both in war and peace, to so unworthy a conclusion, or wrecked himself, so to say, upon an old age of cruelty and vindictiveness, through passion, ill-timed ambition, and insatiable cupidity. Marius never learned to enjoy the beautiful and the good. He only cared about the useful. Useful is great. I like useful. But useful isn't all there is. And beware of the world. Now I'm preaching at you. I'm like half preacher, half mother. We're surrounded by a world that cares about the useful. And the true and the beautiful and the good just aren't very useful sometimes. Anyway, so this is Marius. Marius, so it tells you something about his upbringing, doesn't it? His education. No education. Didn't have no education. He was very well trained in war pursuits. But his education was a little lopsided, you know. Someone yesterday, and this is not a bad answer, said, well, we explore different subjects to find our passions, to find what we love. And that is true to some extent, but it also gives us the impression that we never have to do things we don't love. And sometimes we do. But if you're passionate about one thing to the exclusion of everything else, you get lopsided, right? You can't, I don't know, make music 24 hours a day either. Do you know what I mean? You have to balance it. Even something that's really good and beautiful, it has to be balanced. And war has its place. I'm glad that people will be out there and defend me in wartime if necessary. But you can't live that life only. Kyle, can you put that away? That's just distracting me. Were you going to say something?
Well, you kind of answered it for me. I was like, you kind of need balance for your academics. Like, you're not going to be doing music your whole life and then just exclude math and things like that. So you don't just want to drop everything. If you're focusing towards a certain path, you kind of just want to incorporate a little bit of everything.
But wouldn't it change your life, though, if you thought about everything you do? What kind of person is it making me? Instead of, will I learn all this or will I use it later? But I am learning this now. I'm learning to study and focus. Maybe Plutarch's lives stink as far as you're concerned, you know? But see, this is practice. You're learning to focus on something that you're not loving at the moment. But I'm trying to show you this is lovable. It's lovable, but some tastes are acquired, you know? Okay, enough of that. We met Marius last week. He was in the war with Jugurtha. But first, we didn't hear about this. He was actually in Spain with Scipio. If you remember in last week's reading, Jugurtha got sent to Spain to fight along Scipio because his uncle thought he was awesome and he would go learn from Scipio. And that's where Jugurtha heard that everything in Rome is for sale. And it says, Plutarch tells us that once in Spain, they were at a little dinner party with the generals. A question arose about commanders, and one of the company asked Scipio where the Romans after him should obtain such another general. Scipio, gently clapping Marius on the shoulder as he sat next to him, said, "Here, perhaps. This guy has promise. Maybe he'll be the next Scipio." He got elected. Oh, go ahead.
Is this Africanus?
Aemilianus. Africanus, this is a descendant, yes. It's an adopted son, but yes, yes. He becomes tribune of the people. And listen, I want to highlight this because he starts off so good sounding. I mean, okay, about the Greek thing, but he got elected, and they had a bill for the regulation of voting that was going to hurt the nobility. And he stood up for it against the nobility. But then he turned around and they had another bill for corn distribution. And of course, the plebeians really wanted that. And he was against that. He didn't cater to one side or the other. It says, making himself equally honored by both parties in gratifying neither, contrary to the public interest. This seems really good. I'm not being swayed. I only care what's good for Rome. I will go with the nobility, even though I'm not, or I will confront the nobility if necessary. I'll also confront the plebeians if necessary, if I think it's not in Rome's best interest what they're asking for. This seems like great promise. Scipio is a good guy, and he sees in Marius great promise, but somewhere Marius went off the rails. And that's what we're going to look at here in the next 45 minutes.
I was confused by this, especially because everywhere else, what the person is thinking, what the strategy was, is always listed. But I kept wondering, why did he go against corn distribution? Isn't that just great all around?
Well,
so it gives us no context to the situation to know if that was a good idea or just in its own favor. So it's hard to judge.
That's true, but like you said, Plutarch usually tells us that he's plotting to do it. And honestly, it seems like a win-win for everybody when you pass out free food, but somebody's got to foot the bill. You know what I mean? It can cause problems. But that's a point well taken, Alex. We're not told why he opposed it. But we are told that he's not afraid to oppose it. But he does say this, contrary to the public interest. He doesn't want to do anything contrary to the public interest. And Plutarch, on the flip side, just told us that he made a train wreck of his life. So apparently he's thinking, at this point, he's a good legislator. He's a good person. Did you catch this? He married Julius Caesar's aunt. Did anybody catch? I know. He's Julius Caesar's uncle, Uncle Marius. Where does Julius Caesar learn to behave as he does later? Married Caesar's aunt Julia. So he's Caesar's uncle. We also see an example of his incredible perseverance. Do you remember the story? This is, if you've got the book that looks like mine, I'm on page 552, but you don't, we have different books and it's fine to not follow along. He had growths on his legs and he wanted them removed. What, you want to say it? Or do you remember the? It says tumors, but I don't think we're talking about cancerous, like some sort of growth. It said he was worried about because it was ugly. That was his concern. I get it. Remove them. But okay, no anesthesia. They just start cutting him off. And it's killing him. It says he endured the most excessive torments in the cutting, never either flinching or complaining. But when the surgeon went to the other leg, he declined to have it done, saying, "I see the cure is not worth the pain. Rather have an ugly leg than have you do that to me again." So he starts out in this biography rising from humble beginnings. That's always admirable. And impervious to pain, tough as nails, And apparently a tribune who's not afraid to stand up to both sides. He's not just swaying with the wind. He's like, I will stand up for what is right. But somewhere we're going to see him go south. So he ended up in Africa against Jugurtha. And what did he do to make himself, what do I say, pleasant? Win his soldiers' affection. How did he behave as a general in Africa? Yeah, Alex.
When you work with the soldiers, sleep with the soldiers, do all the things that the soldiers did.
Yes.
So
He didn't sit in his cozy tent and tell them to go dig ditches. It says matching the common soldiers in labor and abstemiousness, in other words, not having very much to eat or drink, just like them. He gained great popularity with them. It is most obliging to the Roman soldier to see a commander eat the same bread, lie upon an ordinary bed, assist in the work of drawing a trench or raising a bulwark. When someone in authority is willing to work alongside you, it's just encouraging. Instead of saying, go do that. Go, you do it. I'm too good for that. I don't need to do that. It's not very encouraging. He's a good leader. He's a good leader in Africa. However, it says there was an episode, Metellus. Do you remember Metellus? He was the commander in Africa that he butted heads with. Metellus teased him, oh, go get elected consul because they're never going to elect you. And they ought not to elect you either because you're just a low-down loser. I'm exaggerating. It said there was a possibility that a friend of Metellus, Turpilius, was going to betray Metellus or the army, and Metellus had to put him to death. And then they found out that he was innocent. And it says Marius boasted that he had involved Metellus in the guilt of putting his friend to death. Okay, this is the first peek I see of, oh, Marius, you're not all okay, are you? We know the story from Sallust. He went back to Rome, talked a lot of trash about the nobles, and got himself elected consul. And Sulla also came back. The war was over. And, oh, did I miss? No, I didn't miss that yet. I wanted to tell you what happened to Jugurtha. They came back. Do you remember at the end of the war that we talked about last week? Jugurtha was betrayed by King Bacchus to Sulla, not to Marius, the commander. Sulla engineered the whole shebang. And Plutarch says Sulla got himself a seal, a signet ring made, on which was engraved Bacchus betraying Jugurtha to him. And he constantly used it. Everybody, I'm the guy. Every time he seals his letters or important papers with his ring, I'm the guy who brought the war to an end, not Marius. It says this was the first occasion given of that fierce and implacable hostility which so nearly ruined the whole Roman Empire. Because one guy was really jealous of another guy. Let's just call it what it is. Marius has, like in Shakespeare, the character flaw, the tragic flaw that brings the character down. He can't stand for anybody to be better than he is. He can't stand it. Can't stand Sulla getting any of my glory. We're going to see it over and over again over the next few pages. No, I got to be number one. I got to be number one. And the bad news is that whatever you do, even if you're number one for a while, you will age and you will get not as good at it anymore. And there will always be somebody behind you that can do it better than you. If you live for being number one, sorry, you're not going to be happy for most of your life. Because even if you get to be number one, you're not going to stay there very long. Like Olympic athletes. And 10 years later, oh, my record has been broken. I'm not number one anymore. You got to live with it or it'll eat you up. It eats Marius up. Yes.
On the topic of, oh, I need to be the best, didn't, when he was born, 7 eagles in the sky or 7 something
Oh,
cool,
yes.
just floating around or whatever. And the auger or the whatever, I don't know
Yes.
who it was, but
Where that was.
she said, you are going to be the best man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, oh, holy number of 7. Wow.
Yes. I remember the story. I can't remember where it was. Yes.
He ends up being elected as a consul 7 times.
7 times.
So there might be a little bit of prophecy there.
I mean, he kind of turned out.
Well, and he was top dog. That's the thing. And so hold on to that idea because Plutarch's going to bring that back at the end of Marius's life and remind us he was. But here's another one of those crossroads. When you are on the top of the heap, if one of you gets to the top of whatever heap you are climbing, you have to be enjoying the moment, and then the moment passes and you're not on top anymore. And you can grieve about the loss of that for the rest of your life, or you can say, thank you, Lord, for that wonderful moment. And thank you for giving me life after that moment too, to enjoy. Anyway, Marius, we've already established Marius makes some bad decisions. So he and Sulla obviously hate each other. This rivalry leads to massive amounts of bloodshed. They bring Jugurtha back. They march him in the triumph, the big parade that a Roman general gets to have for an exceptional victory. And they bring him in chains with carts piled with all the goods that they've brought. Cast him naked into a dungeon. Here for 6 days, struggling with hunger, and to the very last minute desirous of life, he was overtaken by the just reward of his villainies. He died. Jugurtha. Jugurtha. And just to remember for a minute, Jugurtha also had a choice. He could have ruled a third of Numidia for the rest of his life. With the friendship of the Roman people and their blessing, and he threw it all away. He murdered one cousin. He ended up killing the other cousin. I want it all. And now he has nothing. You see a pattern? Plutarch's a very smart writer. I don't think he just throws things in because it's an interesting story. Sometimes maybe he does. But Jugurtha is like this too. He can't stand not to have it all for himself. He doesn't play well with others. He doesn't share well. And Marius doesn't either. So what kind of people, we talked about this last week, what kind of people does he enlist in his army? Poor and insignificant. I am not finding the place, but we talked about it last week too. Yes, he signs up people who have no 553. Oh. Yeah, thank you, Hannah. Proceeded to levy soldiers contrary both to law and custom, enlisting slaves and poor people. We kind of think, so what? But once upon a time, and not so long ago, people really thought an army was better made of people that had property because they have something solid to defend. I have my little farm and my family on my farm, and when I go out and fight, I'm fighting for that. And that's the same reason the founding fathers thought maybe the only people who voted should be property owners. They toyed with that idea for a while, and they decided against it because we have a stake in this. We have a stake in this country. But for them, for Romans, it was huge to have this sort of riffraff. Reminds me of the riffraff that founded Rome. The riffraff joining the army. And like we said last week, this riffraff is going to love Marius. Maybe even more than they love Rome. And Sulla has his own riffraff, that loves Sulla more than they love Marius, and more than they love Rome. So they just get done fighting in Africa, and German tribes are pouring in from the north. Germans, the Teutones and the Cimbri, are marching in, and Marius marches out to meet them. And this is the source of the quote that I did on the video where they built fences out of the bones. And there were so many dead bodies there. Marius covered himself in glory. I'm going to skip over. I had things I want to talk about that was cool, but I'm seeing my time. Marius was the hero of the hour. And he came back to Rome, and I'm going to throw this in because I just thought this was really interesting. Because we're talking about deeds of the body and the mind, it says in one of these battles against the Germans, he first altered the construction of javelins. Apparently, he's a little bit of a weapons engineer, too. They had the point, and the point was stuck into the wood with 2 pegs, and he loosened one of the pegs. So when you stab, the point would stick in and give, and then the pole would drag on the ground. So great. Now I got a javelin stuck in my shield. Great, I'm not dead. But I got this stupid pole under my feet, tripping me. And then it was very effective to have it hit and bend in because of the pin loosened, one of the pins loosened, and then have the pole of the javelin dragging the ground, and it would trip up the enemy. It's very simple, but it's very smart. He's not stupid. He's good at what he does. I guess I answered the next question, didn't I? Was he popular with the crowds after his war? Yes, he was. They elected him to his 5th consulship in a row. Boom, 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 boom. Against the law. They don't care because he's awesome. This also maybe, we're looking for clues, what happens in history. We love you. We just want you to lead us. We will put all our hopes in you. And our hopes are never in one political leader or war leader, are they? They come and go. He's not our salvation. They thought Marius was their salvation. Against a group of people, these Germans, I have to read this too. Sometimes I read things just because it's funny. The barbarians came on with such insolence to show their strength and courage. They went naked in the showers of snow, and through the ice and deep snow climbed up to the tops of the hills, and from thence placing their broad shields under their bodies, let themselves slide from the precipices along their slippery descents. We can sled naked. That is how tough we are. But Marius beat them, and he came back victorious. Then 6th consulship. I'm going to read this line. Plutarch says, he never cared to be a good man so that he were a great one. I don't care if I'm good as long as I can be important. We're not using the terms good and great the same way in the 2 parts of that sentence. I don't care if I'm a good man. I want to be a great one. And he didn't mean morally great. He meant I'm number 1 important. If I can do that and not be a good man, so be it. If I don't need to be a good man, or maybe not being a good man will help me become great. Speaking of which, how did Plutarch say Marius won his 6th consulship? This is the last question I asked you on this page. What did he do? I bet you can guess. After all the stuff we talked about last week. Take a wild guess. Oh, yeah. He obtained his 6th consulship by distributing vast sums of money among the tribes. And by this bribery kept out Metellus. Plutarch tells us that only one man had ever before been consul 6 times. And this guy was 45 years between his first consulship and his last consulship. He was 6 times over 45 years. This guy was 6 times in 6 years. So let's talk about this social war for a minute. Plutarch tells us Marius came back to Rome. And actually, this is not the next question, but it's the next one after that. How did Marius behave when he returned to Rome? This was a little vague question, I feel like. Anybody write anything down for it? On page 571, it says, when he returned to Rome, he built a house close by the Forum. Either, as he himself gave out, that he was not willing his client should be tried with going far. I want to be conveniently located. Or that he imagined distance was the reason why more did not come. He came back, and you know what? Sulla's also in the game now. People don't knock on my door every day anymore. Maybe it's because of where I live. Maybe I should live closer to the Forum. It's a little sad. Why doesn't anybody, people used to visit me. I don't know. Maybe if I make it more convenient for them to visit me, they will come. But they're not coming. Yes.
This, however, was not so. The real reason was that being inferior to others in agreeableness of conversation and the arts of political life, which he ended up deeming unimportant.
Yes.
Like a mere tool and implement of war, he was thrown aside in time of peace.
Yes.
Your hand being war,
You're
you're a great person in war, but you're not a good person in peace.
You have none of these social niceties. You do not know how to deal with people in peacetime. And people don't like you, Marius. Frankly, people don't like you. Yes.
I argue that his lack of education led to his downfall based on the fact that he does not understand the concept of moderation. Moderation and how too much power can be powerful.
No, he's not. You're right.
Like you could have any other example in life, like Socrates. Take Socrates. He willingly killed himself because Greece thought that he was polluting the youth of Athens. He willingly took that. He willingly took hemlock.
But he could have run.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I agree with both of you. It was his sentence, but he had an out. Fortunately for Marius at this point, a war breaks out. Thank goodness, says Marius. And if you would do me a favor, keep your finger, we're going to go back to the questions, but if you turn back to page 111 in your reading guide, I have an outline. I used part of this outline on the video, and I want to look at the part called social war. It's at the top of page 111, okay? So the background for this war is as follows. The people of Italy had been conquered by Rome, but they did not have the rights of Romans. They weren't allowed to vote. And so I'm going to tell you some things that aren't on the outline. In the year 126, all Italians were forbidden to migrate to Rome. If you're from one of the other cities in Italy, no, you're not welcome here. Don't move to Rome. In the year 95, all residents of Rome with only Italian citizenship, not Roman citizenship, were thrown out of the city. We don't want your kind here. A man named Drusus, he's actually the grandfather of the woman who's going to be Augustus's wife, tried to give all Italians Roman citizenship, and somebody assassinated him. This is how they felt about sharing Roman citizenship. So now to the outline. The Latin states decided to secede and form their own republic. We're to heck with you, Rome. We're going to be our own country. They even went so far as to stop using Latin and speak Etruscan. We don't like your dirty, rotten language, Rome. We're going to use our own language. And apparently, they do find a lot of inscriptions from this time period that in Etruscan. Just kind of in your face, Rome. We don't even need your language. Marius, yay, it's a war. Let me at it. Marches out. In 3 years, 300,000 people died. 100,000 a year in Little Italy. Italy is not a big country. What? On all sides, total. Eventually, they got Roman citizenship. In 90 BC, they gave all Italian freemen the vote. I'm probably not going to go over the rest of the outline here is basically what you're reading in Plutarch, but it's a helpful summary of these people's lives if you ever want to look back. And then we will, that outline goes on and we will visit it again, but you can go back to your questions. So that's what they call the social war. You guys know Socius or Socius, depending on which pronunciation you guys are using, ally, right? They're the allies of Rome. And so they rebelled against Rome, and it is the social war, the war against the allies. And great, Marius loves it, but guess who else goes and fights in the social war? Take a guess. Sulla. My archenemy that I hate it when he gets power. It says, as much glory and power as this war, so various in its events and so uncertain as to its success, conferred upon Sulla, so much it took away from Marius. This is page 572. Whether it were that his age was now quenching his former heat and vigor, for he was above 65 years old. He's not young anymore. And he headed out. This was the first question I asked you. He headed out to the east. And it says, I'm losing my place today, guys. I apologize. He headed out, here we are in 571. He was eager to excite some new commotions, hoping that setting at variance some of the kings, and by exasperating Mithridates, the king in the east, he himself should be chosen general. He goes, on purpose to stir up trouble and insults the king, just so maybe they will have a war.
He's an idiot.
Or it's just so sad. I was number one and I just can't let it go. So, but he's got competition now. Sulla's younger. Sulla's capable. And they, Plutarch notes that Marius would go out to the training grounds where the young men worked out, and he would anoint himself with oil and ride the horses and do the gymnastics and everything. And it says, the better sort that saw him pitied, the cupidity and ambition that made one who had risen from utter poverty to extreme wealth, and out of nothing into greatness, unwilling to admit any limit to his high fortune, or to be content with being admired, and quietly enjoying what he had already got. He doesn't know when to stop. He's by Roman standards, the more I age, the less old 65 sounds to me, frankly. But by Roman standards, he's getting on. He's not prime anymore for war pursuits. So there's an argument. Who are they going to send to be in charge of the army in this war with Mithridates? Is it Sulla or Marius? They give it to Sulla, and then Marius's lackeys back in Rome give it to Marius. And they said, go tell Sulla we're taking his army and giving it to Marius. Oh, that's going to go well. No, it's not going to go well. It says, they sent 2 tribunes to receive the army from Sulla. Sulla, hereupon exasperating his soldiers, who were about 35,000 full-armed men, led them to Rome. Oh, they want the army back? Oh, I'll give them the army back. I will march the army back to Rome, and I'll tell them who's going to be in charge of this army. First falling upon the tribunes Marius had sent, and they slew them. Marius having done as much for several of Sulla's friends in Rome. Marius is killing Sulla's allies in Rome. Sulla kills the tribunes sent to him, and Marius freaks out and runs away. And Sulla takes the city. This is this Alex is left, but this is his seven young eagles. And it says he always said in exile he should be consul a seventh time. Then begins this very sad passage. He's in hiding. He's trying to get to Africa, but then the ship leaves without him. He's waiting for his son to get supplies, and his son leaves without him. Then the soldiers who have him on the ship, they're afraid that they're going to catch it if they've got Marius with them. So they just land him on the coast of Italy. He's hiding. Some guy who works in a swamp area puts him in a pit full of mud to hide him. He was pulled out covered with mire and carried away naked to Minturnae and delivered to the magistrates. They have him in prison in a house, and they say, you, go in there and kill him. Let's go do it. Some centurion. He goes in, and Marius hasn't lost his touch. Out of the dark, he hears a loud voice, fellow, darest thou kill Caius Marius? And the guy just walks back out. He says, I cannot kill Caius Marius. And it's all right, just let him go. He's harmless. He's not harmless. He ends up in Africa. And in the meantime, back in Rome is a mess. We have consuls, one of them named Cinna, and one of them Octavius. And Octavius is a straight guy. He's good. Cinna is kind of a slime bag. And they're already arguing, and Marius catches wind of it. Ooh, this is my kind of situation. I love it when people are arguing. Maybe I can get in on that and get my way back in. And it says this, knowing Octavius to be a good man and willing to execute his office with the greatest justice imaginable, and Cinna to be suspected by Sulla and in actual warfare against the government, he determined to join the forces of the latter. I want the slime ball. I want the guy who's already rebelling. I don't want the good guy. Octavius ends up dead. Sulla is away. And Marius marches back into the city. They bring Marius back in. And it says, Cinna and Marius, they desired them to come into the city peacefully and spare the citizens. Cinna, as consul, received the embassy. How am I? Oh, I've lost my thing. Hang on. Cinna, as consul, received the embassy, sitting peaceably, in the curule chair, and returned a kind answer to the messengers. Marius stood by him and said nothing, but gave sufficient testimony by the gloominess of his countenance and the sternness of his looks, that he would in a short time fill the city with blood. They proceeded to murder a number of citizens, as he gave command, partly by word of mouth, partly by signal of his nod. At length, Ancarius, a senator, and one that had been praetor, coming to Marius, and not being re-saluted by him. The guy said hello, and Marius didn't say hello back. With their drawn swords slew him before Marius's face. And henceforth this was their token, immediately to kill all who met Marius, and saluting him were taken no notice of it. If Marius doesn't say hello back, kill him. So his very friends were not without dreadful apprehensions and horror whensoever they came to speak to him. I guess so. I got to say hello, but if I say hello and he doesn't say hello back, I'm dead. This is what Marius does while Sulla's away. Sulla, however, catches wind of this. He hears about it, and starts marching back to Rome. And Marius hears that he's coming. He gets his 7th consulship. But it says he fell into despondency, nocturnal frights, and unquiet sleep. And then listen to this. Though he had now lived 70 years and was the first man that was ever chosen 7 times consul, and had an establishment and riches sufficient for many kings. Yet he complained of his ill fortune, that he must now die before he had attained what he desired. I have such bad luck. Remember, the good generalship is followed by good fortune? Bad choices are followed by bad fortune. Listen, and this is, the lesson that Plutarch draws from the end of his life. Unmindful and thoughtless persons let all that occurs to them slip away from them as time passes on. Retaining and preserving nothing, they lose the enjoyment of the present prosperity by fancying something better to come. Whereas by fortune we may be prevented to this. By fortune we may be prevented to this, something better coming. But that, what we already have, cannot be taken from us. Yet they reject their present success as though it did not concern them, and do nothing but dream of future uncertainties. Thus died Marius, to the great content and joy of Rome. Yay, he's dead. So glad. That is Marius. Always there must be more. Always I must be number one. Let's turn to Sulla. We're not going to spend nearly as much time with Sulla, obviously, because we're running out of time. Also because a long portion of the life was the wars in the East with Mithridates, which it is okay if it was slightly confusing. He was fighting many people in various places, and sometimes other Roman armies who had come to relieve him of command, and he didn't want to give up command. So he had all these wars going on. But let's just look some of the highlights or lowlights, I don't know, of Sulla's career. We already answered this first question. Why do Marius and Sulla not get along? What happened? What did Sulla do that ticked Marius off? Do you remember?
He did get like power and stuff, and he was like younger and stuff.
Yes. He got the surrender of Jugurtha, and he has got to make sure everybody knows it. Oh, Marius didn't do that. I did that. And this is the root cause. Plutarch tells us he was descended of a patrician and a noble family. He had consuls in his ancestry. But it says the time in which he lived was no longer an age of pure and upright manners, but had already declined and yielded to the appetite for riches and luxury. And Sulla is the poster child for luxury. He likes a good time. It says he was prone to amorous pleasures and yielded without resistance to any temptation of voluptuousness. Pleasure, bring it on. Whatever it is, bring it on.
That's the base for a great human being.
But you see how this is different than Marius. Marius is tough as nails. I mean, that's what I'm picturing. Well, they cut those tumor things off his leg. I don't think Sulla could have stood that. He probably would have been bawling. But he too, in his way, was a great general too. So yes, it says, Plutarch says, the glory of the enterprise with Jugurtha secretly grieved Marius. Trying to make sure I don't spend too much time on this. He starts his political career the year following, partly by flatteries, partly by money, got himself elected praetor. While he was in office, once he angrily told Caesar that he should make use of his authority against him, Caesar answered with a smile, "You do well to call it your own. You bought it." Ouch. It did not help matters when it says that Bacchus came to Rome and set up in the temple of Jupiter Capitolinus images bearing trophies with a representation in gold of the surrender of Jugurtha to Sulla. Oh man, that just made it worse. Okay. Then the social war breaks out. The allies rebel. And it says in the course of this war, Marius was not able to signalize his valor in any action, but left behind him a clear proof that warlike excellence requires a strong body and still vigorous, but a strong and still vigorous body. He's aging. And Sulla, it says, on the other hand, by his many achievements, gained himself with his fellow citizens the name of a great commander. And his enemies called him the most fortunate. Yeah, everything falls into place for you, Sulla. And instead of saying, I did this by my own skill, don't call me lucky, he's like, yeah, I am pretty lucky. I owe everything I have to fortune. He's just so easygoing about it. He's not trying to guard his honor, I guess, like Marius is. But he still gets the same amount of power. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I hate it when that happens. Okay.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Awesome.
So this tells us that we can't build our lives on how people see us or pleasing others, because one moment Marius is the man of the day, and the next, when his body fails him of no fault of his own, now it's Sulla, and Marius is all but forgotten.
And Sulla, because you read the life, Sulla ends up dying not in battle. Sulla dies of disease and age, overdoing things. But it's not like Sulla's going to stay on the top of the heap either. You got two more. You got Pompey and Crassus breathing on the back of his neck. And then Julius Caesar, Marius's nephew. The next question I asked you is about Sulla in the East. They send him, as we already talked about, send him to the East for a war. He comes back, marches on Rome, takes out Rome, goes out. Did you have the answer to this one, or are you going to say something else? Go ahead. Oh, I am going to page 617. Okay, page 617. This was a little, you kind of have to read into it. I like the questions to be a little challenging for you to find. But it says that Sulla besieges Athens. And for the war effort, he starts plundering the temples. He starts plundering Delphi. He goes to the temple of Apollo at Delphi, and he says, hand over the treasures that people have offered to Apollo as Thanksgiving. There's millions of dollars probably of treasure in Delphi, huge gold bowls and statues that people make and they offer to him. And he even sends a guy to rob the temple, to tell the priest, hand it over. And it said when he did this, they heard the sound of a harp from the inner shrine. So the guy comes back to Sulla and says, I don't know, I don't think Apollo likes it. And it says, Sulla replied in a scoffing way that it was surprising to him that he did not know that music was a sign of joy, not anger. Apollo is happy I'm taking his stuff. That's why he's playing his harp. Go back and take the stuff.
One of the most jealous of the gods.
Yes. Yeah, please take my stuff. So here's getting to that answer though, Hannah. It says at the very bottom of page 617, it gives names, Titus Flaminius and Manius Acilius. They had not only abstained from violating the Greek temples, but had even given them new gifts and honors and increased the general veneration for them. In the past, Roman commanders came to the East, and they bestowed more treasures on the temples. Sulla comes and he just takes. And maybe Plutarch doesn't say this, but maybe I'm reading into it. Total lack of regard for the gods. I don't care. I'm taking your stuff. I need the money. Whereas the former generals, even if they weren't devoted to Apollo or really believed in him, they at least made an outward show of reverence. And by the time of Sulla, no, we just snatch what we want. We don't care. We have no reverence for the holy places. Looking at my time. He ends up against a fellow Roman commander who has come to relieve him, and Sulla doesn't want to be relieved. This commander's named Scipio, not to be confused with all the other Scipios that we have met. Probably because he has the name, but in not a determined way. It says he invites Scipio, the consul, the other consul, to a treaty of peace. In the meanwhile, he debauched Scipio's men by means of his own, who were as well practiced as the general himself in all the artifices of inveigling, by present money, by promises, fair words, and persuasions, so that in the end, when Sulla with 20 cohorts drew near, on his men saluting Scipio's soldiers, they returned the greeting and came over, leaving Scipio behind them in his tent, where he was found all alone and dismissed. Sulla just recruited the other guy's army. Promises, money. The two armies come together and it's like, yeah, we're ditching you and we're going over to Sulla. On this occasion, Carbo, and this is your fox and the lion, Carbo was heard to say that he had both a fox and a lion to deal with, in the breast of Sulla to deal with, and he was most troubled with the fox. What does he mean?
Sulla is bold to take what he wants, but sly to do it discreetly or cleverly.
Yeah. And the sly part is the trickier part to deal with. I can deal with a guy coming at me with an army. I see him, I know what's going to happen. The tricks behind the scenes thing, that's hard to fight against. Can you help me think? Do we see cases of Marius being particularly cleverly sly? He bribes, but I don't know how sly you have to be to bribe somebody.
He's a good strategist, but when it comes to slyness, and obviously we've seen his social skills aren't even that great. So I'd say he's not necessarily sly.
Mm-hmm.
He's more clever, but not in a discreet way.
Mm-hmm. Sulla apparently is very clever. So Sulla knows what is going on. You know, Marius, we just read in the life of Marius, back in Rome. Meanwhile, back in Rome, Marius is killing people by just not saying hello. And Sulla marches back, and it says 3,000 were besieged. Having sent forth a herald, he promised to receive them to mercy. Sulla promised, on condition that they did the enemy mischief in their coming over. Just surrender to me, but also do as much damage to your friends who aren't surrendering as you possibly can before you come. Trusting to his word, they fell foul on the rest of their companions and made a great slaughter of one another. Nevertheless, Sulla gathered together in the circus, as well these as other survivors of the party, to the number of 6,000. And just as he commenced speaking to the Senate in the temple of Bologna, proceeded to cut them down by men appointed for that service, 6,000. The cry of so vast a multitude put to the sword in so narrow a space was naturally heard some distance, and startled the senators, I guess so. He, however, continued his speech with a calm and unconcerned countenance, and bade them listen to what he had to say, and not busy themselves with what was doing out of doors. He had given directions for the chastisement of some offenders. This gave the most stupid of the Romans to understand that they had merely exchanged, not escaped, tyranny. And Marius, being of a naturally harsh temper, had not altered, but merely continued what he had been. Whereas Sulla, using his fortune moderately and unambitiously at first, and giving good hopes, cast a blemish upon offices of great authority, as if they deranged men's former habits and character, and gave rise to violence, pride, and inhumanity. We always knew Marius was a piece of work. Sulla seemed okay. So some people said, well, is it Sulla that wasn't okay, or is it being the ruler that makes people not okay? Does power corrupt? And absolute power corrupt absolutely? Is that true? Was Sulla already like this inside, or did he get a taste of power and he turned into a whore? Because it says,
Sounds like he was already.
it sounds like maybe a little bit of both. Maybe it's not an either or. Sulla, thus wholly bent on slaughter. It says Caius Metellus, one of the younger men, made bold in the Senate to ask him what end there was of these evils. We do not ask you, said he, to pardon any whom you have resolved to destroy, but to free from doubt those whom you are pleased to save. Sulla answered that he knew not as yet whom to spare. Why then, said he, tell us whom you will punish. Immediately, Sulla proscribed 80 persons, and after one day's respite, posted 220 more. On the third day, as many again, proscribing any who should dare to receive and cherish a proscribed person, without exception to brother, son, or parents. If your dad's on the list and you help him, you're on the list too.
No piety to family.
No.
That part of Roman culture is gone.
And to anyone who should slay any one proscribed person, 2 talents. Those who perished through public animosity or private enmity were nothing in comparison of the numbers who suffered for their riches. It's very convenient to just put somebody on the list. It's like, oh, he's dead now. He has no heirs. That's mine now. Even the murderers began to say that his fine house killed this man, a garden that, a third his hot baths. Quintus Aurelius, a quiet, peaceable man, coming into the forum to read the list, and finding himself among the proscribed, cried out, woe is me, my Alban farm has informed against me. I'm only on the list because of my farm. This is the reign of terror that Sulla unleashed. He killed and he killed and he killed. He had himself declared dictator, although I feel like Sulla is the only emergency happening in Rome right now. Sold all confiscated property in whatever way he wanted. Forced a woman to, wishing to ensure Pompey the Great, made him divorce his wife, and forced Aemilia, the daughter of Scaurus and Metella, his own wife, to leave her husband. Made Pompey get a divorce, made his stepdaughter get a divorce, so that they could get married. So that Pompey will now be related to me by marriage, and he will be more faithful to me. They did this a lot. This is a really twisted Roman thing. It's like, I'm marrying your wife. Divorce her. Well, she's pregnant. I don't care. Divorce her. I'm marrying her. I know. I have nothing good to say about that at all. Yes.
I'm pretty sure, I read in another book, that at this time, Julius Caesar was actually on the list. And he had to flee into the mountains.
He did. He did. We will find out more. All these people's lives are going to intertwine. You know, I mean, as you read more lives, as you read Crassus and Pompey, you're going to hear more about Sulla, and it's going to keep weaving in and out of each other. Yes, indeed. Which answers the next question: how did he behave when he came back and controlled Rome? Bloodthirsty tyrant. That would be how he behaved. And I think Alex really already talked a little bit about this. Oh, no, that was Marius. I'm sorry. What was Sulla's attitude towards omens, dreams, and superstitions? Let's just throw that in there. Did you notice anything? Particularly at the end, it says he had soothsayers and astrologers with him all the time. But he also, early on, when he said that, yeah, I'm lucky, I ascribe almost everything to luck. He said he never trusted anything more than the messages that came to him in his sleep in the night. If I get a message from the gods in my dream, do it. And I'm picturing in my mind these two men, and one just so like intense. I can see him straining every nerve, right? It's just like, I got to be number one. And Sulla's just sort of, just hanging out, and he was much better looking with his nose. I know it.
He's like a man child and how he has power, but then he uses it all to keep his power.
But then, inexplicably, he retires. It says, he laid down his authority and placed the right of consular elections once more in the hands of the people. And when they were held, he not only declined to seek that office, but in the forum exposed his person publicly to the people, walking up and down as a private man. Because, somebody might want to kill him in revenge. Like, I'm perfectly safe. Here I am. Had other people elected consul, and apparently just retired to have parties all the time. Sulla, consecrating the 10th of his whole substance to Hercules, entertained the people with sumptuous feastings. The provision was so much above what was necessary that they were forced daily to throw great quantities of meat into the river, and they drank wine 40 years old and upwards. His wife died, and he had her move to another house when she got sick. She'll slow down the party. We don't want that in the house. He kept company with actresses, musicians, and dancers, drinking with them on couches night and day. But by these courses, he encouraged a disease, which had begun from unimportant cause. For a long time, he failed to observe that his bowels were ulcerated and his corrupted flesh broke out in lice. Apparently, he smelled, and they tried to bathe him, but I know. And Plutarch gives us other instances of people who have died. He says from this creeping sickness. However, the day before he died, it being told him that the magistrate Granius deferred the payment of a public debt in expectation of his death. In other words, Granius owes money to the public treasury, and for some reason he thinks it's going to be overturned if Sulla dies. Maybe Sulla ordered this, so he's waiting to hold it. I just want to see if he dies, then I don't have to pay it. And sent for him to his house. Sulla sent for this guy. Placing his attendants about him caused him to be strangled. But through the straining of his voice and body, he lost a great quantity of blood. Upon this, his strength failing him, after spending a troublesome night, he died. His monument stands in the Campus Martius, with an epitaph of his own writing, the substance of it being that he had not been outdone by any of his friends in doing good, nor by any of his foes in doing bad. This is what Rome has become, guys, by the 90s, the 80s BC. And the world is getting ready to change. They know it. This can't go on indefinitely. This can't go on indefinitely. They hope maybe Sulla's dead, it'll be okay. No, it's not okay. Read Crassus and Pompey. It's not going to be okay. But keep in mind the big picture too. It's 80 BC. In 80 years, the world is going to change. They just don't know how. Jesus is going to come. Everything is about to change. And while they are fixated on all the stuff we're about to read for the next, between now and Thanksgiving, a little after Thanksgiving, while they are fixated on this, there is something stirring in tiny Israel, an outpost after Pompey, an outpost of the Roman Empire that's going to change everything. All right, thank you. Jot down what you notice about Pompey and Crassus or Marius and Sulla, and just hold on to it. We'll use it later, but you don't need to use it this week. Have a good week, guys.